The man in the hoodie. A cold wind rolled down Westbourne Avenue, tugging at scarves, rustling leaves, and making even the finest suits look a little less put together. The city was getting ready for the Fall Art Gala, the biggest event of the year at Ashwood Gallery, a modern space known for its white walls, aggressive critics, and paintings that cost more than most people's homes. Keanu Reeves walked quietly through the front door, unnoticed by most. He wore a gray hoodie, plain jeans, and scuffed sneakers. His beard was a little unkempt, his posture relaxed. He didn't look like a man anyone should care about, certainly not here, where image was everything. He held a rolled canvas in his hand, something wrapped carefully in aged butcher paper, edges frayed with time. The receptionist barely looked up. "Sir, the main event is upstairs. Guests aren't allowed to bring in outside work." Keanu smiled politely. "I was told I could speak with the dealer, Darian. You and every hopeful artist in the city," she said under her breath, then pointed to a short bench near the back wall. "Wait there." He sat. His hands rested gently on the canvas. He didn't seem impatient. His eyes scanned the room, with quiet interest, looking at the textures, the light fixtures, and the small girl by the fountain, trying to tug her mother's coat. 30 minutes passed. Then 40-5. Finally, a tall man in a pressed suit and a voice like a blade cut through the air. "Mr. Darian will see you," the receptionist said flatly. Keanu followed a polished assistant up a wide staircase lined with massive abstract pieces. The assistant didn't speak. They reached a side room, smaller than the others, with only 2 chairs and a polished steel desk. Darian was already sitting, legs crossed, a tablet in hand. He didn't look up. "Your name?" "Keanu." Darian looked up slowly, eyes narrowing. "Keanu, right. And what is it you're showing me?" Keanu unrolled the canvas carefully. Inside was a painting, raw, emotional, and vivid. It showed a boy at a bus stop under the rain, the shadows around him shaped like reaching hands, and a single red umbrella above him that looked like hope. Darian glanced at it for 2 seconds. "Is this a joke?" Keanu blinked. "No, sir. You brought that." He gestured at the painting with distaste. "To Ashwood Gallery, to my office. Who told you we feature beginner street art?" Keanu didn't react to the insult. "No one told me. I just thought wrong." Darian snapped. "We don't feature pity pieces. This gallery represents investment-grade work, not emotional therapy. You're clearly going through something, but maybe try a sidewalk display or online blog. This is a waste of my time." Keanu remained seated. "I understand, do you? Because people like you think just because you feel something, the world must see it. That's not art, that's delusion." Keanu rolled the canvas back up slowly. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "Thank you for your time." Darian waved his hand dismissively. "Close the door on your way out." As Keanu walked out, the assistant leaned close to Darian. "You sure you want to be that rude?" He didn't seem like a nobody. Darian scoffed. "If I had $1 for every washed-up man with a dream, I'd still have less than what that painting cost behind you." Downstairs, Keanu passed the girl by the fountain again. She was now looking up at a painting she couldn't understand. He paused and whispered something to her mother. A moment later, he handed the little girl a tiny folded piece of paper with a sketch on it, her holding a red balloon. Her eyes lit up. Outside, the wind was colder. Keanu walked to the end of the block where a black car waited. The driver stepped out. "Mr. Reeves, are you ready to head to the other location?" Keanu nodded. "Did they treat you well?" "They were honest," Keanu replied. The car drove off toward the other side of town. But something had shifted. Behind the scenes, across locked doors and secret paperwork, Keanu Reeves wasn't just a visitor. He was the silent benefactor of Ashwood Gallery. He owned it, completely. But no one, especially Darian, had any idea. And Keanu wasn't done yet. He had a reason for coming in disguise. And the real story was only beginning. The signature under the dust. Next morning, the staff at Ashwood Gallery moved briskly. The big gala was only days away, and tensions were rising. Cleaners vacuumed the pristine floors, interns double-checked the lighting, and art pieces were being adjusted by millimeters to please Darian's strict vision. Everything had to be perfect. Darian stood in the center of the main floor, holding a coffee he didn't drink. This year's gala must bring in at least 2 million in pledges. Understand, the staff nodded. No one dared argue. But there was a ripple. Something unspoken had started spreading about the man in the hoodie. The receptionist whispered about how he looked familiar. The assistant who led him upstairs thought his eyes were to calm, to knowing, and the security guard by the entrance. He was almost certain he had seen that face before, maybe in a movie, or on a billboard, or both. Still, no one said it aloud. In a quiet office at the back of the building, an older woman named Evelyn sat flipping through donor files. She'd been with the gallery for 17 years, longer than Darian, longer than most. She was quiet, kind, and unnoticed, just the way she liked it. But when she saw one name on the list of primary funders, her hands froze. KeanuReeves, full ownership, silence clause attached. Her breath caught. No, she pulled up the original founding documents, eyes scanning page after page. Dates, transfers, hidden trusts. Everything pointed to one fact. KeanuReeves was not just a silent donor, he was the sole owner of Ashwood Gallery. But why had he come in the way he did? Why show up like a struggling artist and get humiliated? Evelyn closed the file and stood up. Across town, in a modest art studio above an old bookstore, Keanu sat alone. He had just finished sketching a rough scene, 2 men sitting across a table, one offering a hand, the other refusing it. He looked tired, but there was peace in his eyes. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Evelyn. "I remember you. And I remember why you saved this place. I think they've forgotten. It's time they remember." Keanu smiled softly. Years ago, when the original gallery was about to go bankrupt, he had stepped in quietly. No press, no announcement, just kindness. He believed in places where emotion mattered, where art could mean something. He had asked only one thing, that no one know it was him. But now, he had come back. Not to reclaim the place. But to test it. Back at the gallery, Evelyn knocked on Darian's office door. "Busy," he barked. "This is important." He opened the door halfway. "Make it fast. That artist from yesterday, the one in the hoodie. I need to talk to you about him." Darian sighed. "What, do you want me to apologize? I get 50 amateurs a week." "He's not an amateur. You're defending that sloppy painting of a bus stop." Evelyn didn't flinch. "I think you should check the ownership files." Darian frowned. "What does that have to do with anything?" "Everything." He waved her off. "I don't have time for conspiracy theories." But the seed was planted. Within an hour, curiosity got the better of him. He opened the files. Then he read the name. His face went pale. KeanuReeves, not as a guest, not as a what-I'm investor. Owner. Full. Undisputed. He sat in silence, then stood up, then sat again. A bead of sweat ran down his temple. That night, a strange invitation went out to the gallery's staff. It came from an anonymous address, but carried authority. Mandatory meeting, tomorrow, 7 p.m. Where something simple. Location, basement exhibition room. No one understood. But everyone came. The next evening, the basement room was cold and dimly lit. The walls were bare except for one new painting, the same one Keanu had brought. The Boy in the Rain. Evelyn stood beside it. Then the elevator doors opened, and Keanu walked in, still wearing his hoodie. The room went silent. The receptionist's mouth dropped open. The assistant turned red. Darian tried to speak, but couldn't find a word. Keanu stood before them. No anger, no gloating, just honesty. "I asked to be seen yesterday, not as someone famous, not as someone with money, just someone who believes in emotion, in stories, in quiet art." He paused, but the gallery forgot. It forgot what made it special, what made people walk in off the street and feel something. He turned to Darian. "You judge without asking, and now you stand shocked, not because of what I painted, but because of who I am." Darian's voice finally cracked through the air. "Why? Why didn't you just tell us?" "Because truth reveals people," Keanu said quietly. "Not titles, not fame. Behavior does." No one spoke. Keanu looked around the room. "This place can be better. Not because of me, because of all of you, if you choose it." He left without another word. Darian stood frozen. He was no longer in control. And for the first time, he realized what true power looked like. Not loud. Not rich. But kind. Humble. And unforgettable. Whispers in the white walls. Next morning, Ashwood Gallery did not feel like itself. The walls were the same white. The lighting still made everything glow. But something deeper had changed, something that couldn't be seen in the frames or the paint. The air was heavy with realization, with quiet shame, and with curiosity about what would come next. Darian didn't show up to the office until nearly noon. He walked slowly through the hallway, nodding stiffly at people he normally ignored. No one returned the nod. In his private office, he sat behind his desk and stared at his own reflection in the dark screen of his tablet. Yesterday's meeting had stripped something from him, not power, not money, but illusion. He had always believed he controlled the gallery because he had sharp taste, a strong voice, and an expensive suit. But the man he insulted, the one in worn sneakers and a rolled-up canvas, had more authority than anyone in the building. And he had said nothing cruel in return. That silence was harder to face than any shouting would have been. Across the building, Evelyn walked past the receptionist's desk. The young woman looked up nervously. Was it really him? She whispered. The real Keanu? Evelyn nodded gently. Yes. The receptionist's face twisted. I was rude. So rude. Then maybe it's time to be different. Meanwhile, in a small neighborhood cafe that smelled of cinnamon and ink, Keanu sat with an elderly artist named Mrs. Alara. Her hands trembled from age, but her voice was strong. They forgot your heart, Keanu. That's the danger of places like that. People look at price tags instead of pain. Keanu smiled. That's why I went back. I wanted to see if it was still alive. And what do you think? I think it's buried, but not dead. Alara sipped her tea. So what are you going to do? He looked out the window. Remind them. Back at the gallery, a quiet notice was posted to the staff board. Ashwood Gallery welcomes all artists for an open wall evening. Theme: what we carry. All work accepted. No judging. No names. No price tags. The staff stared at the message. Some were confused. Others were intrigued. Darian read it twice, then stormed into Evelyn's office. Did you write this? She looked at him calmly. No, but I approved it. Under whose authority? The owner's. He blinked. You mean? Yes. He's turning this place into a community center. Evelyn tilted her head. Maybe that's what it needs. Darian left without another word. That Friday, the gallery transformed. It wasn't a gala. There were no suits, no limousines, no champagne trays. Just people. The walls, once reserved for million-dollar abstracts, were now covered with paintings from teenagers, sketches from street artists, and even drawings from a children's hospital across the street. One wall held a painting of an old shoe. Another showed a bird flying with a broken wing. Each piece carried a story, and beside each one, instead of a price, was a note, painted by a mother of four trying to start again. My father never came home. This is how I remember him. I haven't spoken in public for 3 years, but I painted this. The visitors didn't walk past these quickly. They stopped. They stared. Some cried. Others just stood still, as if the silence was louder than applause. In the corner, Keanu stood beside a young man with paint on his shirt. You did that one? Keanu asked. The boy nodded shyly. It's not perfect. Neither is life, Keanu said softly. That's why it matters. Darian watched from the back of the room. He expected chaos. What he saw was beauty, but he also saw something else. He saw people he had rejected, people he had dismissed for not fitting his version of art. They were here, and they were more powerful than he had ever been. For the first time, he felt small, but he also felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. The next day, Evelyn entered her office and found a sealed envelope on her desk. Inside was a note from Keanu. Thank you for protecting this place even when others forgot. I've seen enough. The gallery is yours now. Guide it with heart. Below the note was a signed transfer of ownership. Evelyn covered her mouth in shock. Across town, Keanu stepped onto a quiet sidewalk. His bag was light, his heart lighter. A reporter caught up to him. Reeves, any comment on what happened at Ashwood? Keanu smiled gently. Sometimes the best way to lead is to step away. He walked off into the morning sun, and behind him, a gallery once ruled by ego was now filled with stories, kindness, and second chances. The canvas remembers weeks past. The energy inside Ashwood Gallery had changed completely. The open wall evening had become a monthly event, drawing people from every corner of the city, students, veterans, single mothers, and quiet souls who had never shown their work to anyone before. The gallery no longer smelled only of polish and silence. Now, it smelled of coffee, charcoal, and life. You could hear soft laughter, quiet tears, and deep conversations in every room. Evelyn walked slowly through the front lobby, holding a cup of herbal tea. Staff greeted her with real warmth now, not because she was their new boss, but because they respected her heart. She paused beside a new display, a painting of a boy and a dog sleeping on a bench under a streetlight. Below it was a small note, "For my brother, who always gave even when he had nothing." She blinked away a tear. "We're doing the right thing," she whispered. Darian, now no longer head curator, had been offered a position as assistant coordinator. It was meant to be a gentle step down, but the message was clear. He had almost quit, but something held him back. He now spent his days hanging artwork and his evenings studying pieces he would have once tossed aside. The shift in his posture was small but real. He no longer barked orders. He asked questions. He listened. One afternoon, he sat down beside Evelyn in the break room. "He could have ruined me publicly," Darian said quietly. Evelyn nodded. "But he didn't." "Why?" She smiled softly. "Because true strength doesn't need revenge." Darian looked down at his tea. "I judged a fast. We all did," she replied. "But growth is not about never falling. It's about what you do after." Meanwhile, Keanu was nowhere to be seen. He had left no trace, no press statement, no interviews. But his presence lingered in the way people looked longer at each painting, in the way they spoke with more kindness to those who seemed unsure of themselves. His painting of the boy in the rain had been placed in a quiet alcove, surrounded by a circle of soft light. It was now the most visited piece in the gallery. One day, a woman with a burn scar down her left cheek stood before it for nearly an hour. She finally turned to Evelyn and whispered, "He painted me. I was that child once." Evelyn simply held her hand and nodded. Then, something unexpected arrived. A small package, no return address, addressed to Evelyn. Inside was a rolled-up canvas and a note, "For the next chapter, pass it on." The painting showed an old gallery, full of color, bursting with people. In the center stood a woman, short, gray-haired, holding the door open for others to enter. Evelyn. She gasped. "He's watching," she whispered. The next morning, Evelyn called an emergency staff meeting. Everyone gathered near the new exhibit wing, still under construction. She stood before them, holding the painting. "We're expanding. We're building a room for the unseen, a space for stories that were once silenced. This will be called the Kindness Wing." Applause filled the gallery. But no one clapped louder than Darian. Outside, far from the city, Keanu stood on a beach with his feet in the sand, sketchbook in hand. He wasn't thinking about fame or money. He was drawing a bench, a child with an umbrella, a woman with gray hair smiling at the door. Then he turned the page. He drew a boy being mocked for his scars, until a stranger knelt beside him. He was already writing his next story. But this one, too, would be signed only by silence. And far away in the Ashwood Gallery, visitors continued to come. Not for names. Not for price tags. But for what art was always meant to be, a mirror for the soul. A hand on the shoulder. A voice that whispered, "You matter." When silence speaks louder, the winter sun broke through the glass ceiling of Ashwood Gallery, casting warm golden light on the wooden floor. Snowflakes drifted softly outside the tall windows, making the inside feel like a quiet dream. But even with the cold outside, the gallery had never felt warmer. It had been 3 months since the open wall night and Keanu's quiet visit. And yet, people still asked about the man in the hoodie. They didn't ask because of his fame. Most of the new visitors didn't even know who he was. They asked because of what he left behind. A story. A memory. A challenge to be better. Inside the Kindness Wing, Art filled every corner. There were no labels, no price lists, just stories beside each piece. A sculpture made of broken glass had a tag that read, "I took the things that hurt me and shaped them into something that doesn't." A small charcoal sketch of an old woman's hands read, "These fingers raised 6 children. They also buried 2. People came in silence, not out of formality, but because the room invited stillness. It didn't demand attention. It asked only for honesty." And slowly, the city began to change. One day, a young artist named Mia stepped into the gallery. She wore oversized clothes, her hair in her eyes, and carried a large portfolio tightly under her arm. She didn't look like someone ready to speak, but she had heard about the kindness wing, about a place where no one would laugh. She walked straight to Evelyn, who was arranging new submissions. "Hi," Mia whispered. Evelyn looked up with a soft smile. "You brought something." Mia nodded. I don't know if it's good." "Then, it's probably full of truth," Evelyn said. They opened the portfolio together. Inside were soft pastel portraits. Each showed a different emotion: fear, joy, grief, hope. But they all had one thing in common. Each subject had a small detail out of place: a broken tooth, a crooked eye, a scar. Evelyn looked up. "These are beautiful." Mia blinked back tears. "No one's ever said that before." Evelyn pointed to a corner of the room. "Then let's show the world." That weekend, Mia's work was placed in a gentle curve of the kindness wing. Next to it was a short message: "We are all imperfect, and that is why we are worth painting." The response was overwhelming, not from critics, but from everyday people. A bus driver left a note: "I saw myself in the one with the crooked smile." A young girl drew her own scar and pinned it beside the frame. A teacher brought his entire class to see the exhibit, and for the first time, he cried in front of them. Darian walked through the gallery slowly. He had stopped wearing suits. Now he wore a simple shirt and carried a clipboard. He paused beside Mia's portraits and smiled. Then he did something he never thought he would do. He walked over to Mia, who was standing shyly in the corner, pretending to look at other pieces. "You don't know me," he said, "but I was once the kind of person who would have rejected this harshly. And I just wanted to say, thank you for showing me what I missed." Mia didn't answer right away. Then she said quietly, "Someone told me once that real strength is kindness." Darian nodded. "Someone told me that too." Across the gallery, Evelyn sat beside the painting of the boy in the rain. A man with a backpack stood beside her. He looked at the painting for a long time. Then he said, "Do you know who painted this?" Evelyn looked at him carefully. "Yes, but sometimes it's better not to say." "Why?" "Because if you knew, you'd see the painter instead of the painting. And this deserves to be seen on its own." The man nodded. "It helped me. Then it's done its job." That night, Evelyn received a small box on her desk. Inside was a folded note: "The next piece is ready. It's not for display, it's for you." Beneath the note was a painting of Evelyn herself, not standing or smiling, but sitting quietly at a desk, surrounded by art, looking out a window with a single tear falling down her cheek. On the corner of the canvas were 2 words: "Thank you." No signature. But she knew, and as the snow thickened outside, she placed the painting on the back wall of her office. It would never be sold. Never shown. Because some art was not for the world. Some art was for the heart. And somewhere far from the gallery, in a quiet town with no paparazzi and no red carpets, Keanu Reeves helped an old man fix a fence. They didn't talk about galleries or films. They talked about splinters and wood grain and how the sunset makes everything look like gold. And that night, Keanu sat on his porch and painted again. This time, it was a girl with paint-stained fingers, holding the world in her hands. The final frame. A year had passed since the man in the hoodie walked into Ashwood Gallery. In that time, the space had transformed from a cold temple of status into a living, breathing home for storytellers. It was no longer a place only the wealthy could touch. It had become something sacred, where people brought their truth, their pain, their hope, and their healing. The kindness wing had grown. It now stretched into 3 rooms, each one carrying works from people who once believed they weren't enough. On a rainy spring morning, a boy in a wheelchair rolled into the gallery with his mother. He stared at a painting of a broken toy soldier under a storm cloud. The boy didn't say a word. He just nodded slowly, like he understood something too deep for words. A few feet away, an elderly man placed a small sculpture made of bottle caps and string on a low pedestal. The tag read, "For my wife, who waited for me through every storm." Near the center of the gallery, Evelyn stood with Darian. They were going over a new layout. Darian had changed. He still had opinions, but now he asked questions first. His voice had softened, his eyes more thoughtful. "Do you think he'll ever come back?" he asked quietly. Evelyn didn't answer right away. Then she smiled. "I think he never really left." That night, Ashwood prepared for something new. An announcement had been sent to their mailing list, but this time, there was no headline artist, no sponsor, no celebrity guest. Just a handwritten message, a tribute to the forgotten voices. No cameras, no press, just presence. At 7 p.m., people entered quietly. No one dressed for fame. No one asked for selfies. There were candles on the floor, soft music in the air, and in the center of the main room stood one painting covered in a deep blue cloth. Evelyn stepped forward. "This piece was delivered 2 days ago," she said. "No name, no instruction. Just one request, that it be shown only tonight. To remind us of what this gallery has become." She gently pulled the cloth away. Gasps filled the room. It was the painting of the boy in the rain, but this time, the boy was older. His back was straighter. The red umbrella was now in his hand, sheltering another child from the storm. Behind them was Ashwood Gallery, glowing with golden light, and hidden in the lower corner, barely visible, were 4 tiny words. "You made it matter." No signature. Just silence. Outside, behind a parked delivery van, Keanu Reeves stood in the shadows. He watched through the window as people gathered around the painting, not because it was his, but because it spoke to them. He turned to walk away when a girl with paint-stained fingers stepped outside. "It was me." She saw him. He stopped. They didn't speak, but she smiled and nodded gently. He nodded back, then walked into the night. Months later, a letter arrived at Ashwood, addressed to Evelyn. No return address. Inside was a photograph. In it, a small art school had opened in a forgotten part of the city. The walls were bare brick. The supplies were basic, but the faces of the children inside were lit with joy. On the back of the photo were 3 words, "Art finds light." And so, the gallery kept going. More stories came, more lives were changed. People walked in with nothing but a canvas and left, knowing they mattered. And above the front entrance, newly carved in stone, were these words, "Not all masterpieces hang on walls, some walk among us." And though the world never saw the man in the hoodie again, his kindness lived on in every frame, every corner, and every quiet breath inside the Ashwood Gallery.